Aphorism 36. Granted that nothing is given as real except our world of desires and passions, that we can rise or sink to no other reality than the reality of our desires, for thinking is only the relationship of these drives to one another. It is not permitted to make the experiment and ask the question whether this which is given does not suffice, or an understanding even of the so-called mechanical or material world. I do not mean as a deception, an appearance, an idea, in the Berkeleian or Schopenhauerian sense, but as possessing the same degree of reality as our emotions themselves, as a more primitive form of the world of emotions, in which everything still lies locked in mighty unity and then branches out and develops in the organic process. Also, as is only fair, is made weaker or more sensitive, as a kind of instinctual life in which all organic functions, together with self-regulation, assimilation, nourishment, excretion, metabolism, are still synthetically bound together as a ascendant form of life. In the end, it is not merely permitted to make this experiment. It is commanded by the conscience of method, not to assume several kinds of causality so long as the experiment of getting along with one has not been taken to its ultimate limits, to the point of nonsense, if I may say so. That is a morality of method which one may not repudiate. Nowadays it follows from its definition, as a mathematician would say. In the end, the question is whether we really recognize will as efficient, whether we believe in the causality of will. If we do so, and fundamentally believe in this is precisely our belief in causality itself, then we have to make the experiment of positing causality of will hypocritically as the only one. Will can of course operate only on will and not on matter, not on nerves, for example. Enough, one must venture the hypothesis that wherever effects are recognized, will is operating upon will, and that all mechanical occurrences, insofar as a force is active in them, are force of will, effects of will. Granted, finally, that one succeeded in explaining our entire instinctual life as the development and ramification of one basic form of the will, as will to power, as in my theory. Granted that one could trace all organic functions back to the will to power and could also find that in the solution to the problem of procreation and nourishment. They are all one problem. One would have acquired the right to define all efficient force unequivocally as will to power. The world seen from within, the world described and defined according to its intelligible character. It will be will to power and nothing else. Aphorism 37. What? Does that, to speak vulgarly, not mean God is refuted, but the devil is not? On the contrary. On the contrary, my friends. And who the devil compels you to speak vulgarly? Aphorism 38. As happened lately in all the clarity of modern times with the French Revolution, that gruesome and closely constituted superfluous farce, into which, however, noble and enthusiastic spectators all over Europe interrupted from distance their own indignation and raptures so long and so passionately that the text disappeared beneath the interpretation, so a noble posterity would once again misunderstand the entire past and only thus perhaps make the sight of it endurable. Or rather, has this not already happened? Have we ourselves not been this noble posterity? And insofar as we comprehend this, is it not at this moment done with? Aphorism 39. No one is likely to consider a doctrine true merely because it makes happy or makes virtuous, excepting perhaps the dear idealists who rapturize over the good, the true, the beautiful, and let all kinds of colorful, clumsy, good-natured desatria swim about together in their pond. Happiness and virtue are no arguments, but even thoughtful spirits like to forget that making unhappy and making evil are just as little countermeasurements. Something might be true, although at the same time harmful and dangerous in the highest degree. Indeed, it could pertain to the fundamental nature of existence, that a complete knowledge of it would destroy one, so that the strength of a spirit could be measured by how much truth could it take, more clearly to what degree it needed in attunement, veiled, sweetened, blunted, and falsified. But there can be no doubt that for the discovery of certain parts of truth, the wicked and unhappy are in a more favorable position, and are more likely to succeed. Not to speak of the wicked, who are happy, a species about whom the moralists are silent. Perhaps severity, cunning, could provide more favorable conditions for the formation of the strong, independent spirit, and a philosopher than does that gentle, sweet, yielding good-naturedness and art of taking things lightly, such is prized in a scholar, and rightly prized. Supposing in advance that the concept philosopher is not limited to the philosopher who writes books, or worse, writes books of his philosophy. A final trait in the image of the free-spirited philosopher is provided by Stendhal. And in the view of what German taste is, I do not want to fail to emphasize it, for it goes against German taste. Pour un très bon philosophe, said this last great psychologist, il faut un très s'éclair sans illusion, bon banquier, qui a fondé à la fond partie du concret, res pure fier des découvrir un philosophe, c'est-à-dire pour voir clair dans ce qui c'est. Should I say, pardon my French? Or the barely mispronunciation of French. Welcome, everybody, to another journey on Beyond Good and Evil. It's New Year's Eve. Joyful and euphoric New Year's Eve for everybody. Nietzsche, in 1882, before we decipher everything vividly or concisely of what he's saying for today, in 1882, Nietzsche proclaimed his resolution for the next year, and in January, he published his fourth book in the Joyful Science titled Sanctus Januarius, or Saint January in anglicized English. Why does he named his fourth book after Saint Januarius? Because of the miracle of Januarius, where his blood became water and flowed evenly and calmly. And Nietzsche wrote, I'm remembering correctly, Nietzsche wrote to his friend, make sure to read book 3, but book 4, exceptionally in book 4, because that's where my blood became water again. It flowed evenly. And this is his proclamation, or not, well, both proclamation and his New Year's revolution. This is from Aphorism 276 of book 4. For the new year, I still live, I still think. I must still live, for I must still think. Sum igro cogito, cogito igro sum. Today, everyone takes the liberty of expressing his wish and his favorite thought. Well, I also mean to tell what I have wished for myself today, and what thought first crossed my mind this year. A thought which ought to be the basis, and the pledge, and the sweetening of all my favorite life. I want more and more to perceive the necessary characters in things, as the beautiful. I shall thus be one of those who beautify things. Amor fati. Let that henceforth be my love. I do not want to wage war with the ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not want to accuse the accusers. Looking aside, let that be my sole negation. All in all, to sum up, I wish to be at any time hereafter a yea sayer or yes sayer, aka amor fati. To summarize, loving innocently and actively fate with conscious effort. You interpret that aphorism at your time. Now it's time for Nietzsche and Beyond Good and Evil. We begin with 36 after the short passage of 35 of O Voltaire. He begins forward of grant that nothing is given as real except our world of desires and passions. Previous aphorisms, he's criticizing the virtuous enthusiasm and hypnotism of not solely the philosophers, but people who love to separate this apparent world, our world, to a real, beyond transcendent world that we can't physically grab and be palpable for. But we can imagine to go there. But while imagining to go there, you have to be pure in soul. And Nietzsche would say, okay, while you're using appearance, palpability, and experience, this apparent world, you're dependent on this apparent world's materialism, well, not materialism, but physical and material truth that appears before you to create your other world. What if this world didn't exist? Would you still create another world? Are you still dependent on the sources that's before you? But now he enters the world of desires and passions. Everything that rise to sink to know other reality than the reality of our drives. We finally, hearing that word, we finally arrive of what he's saying of the will to power. He said it once before in Aphorism 13. He said it in Aphorism 9 with the Stoics, but that's a spiritual will to power. And watch my video on Aphorism 13, where the guest of that time was Foad, and we discussed vividly what the will to power is. We're not saying it here. We'll accept what Nietzsche says of his will to power. For thinking is only the relationship of these drives to one another. Relational. It is not permitted to make the experiment and ask the question whether this which is given not to suffice, but the understanding of the so-called mechanical or material world. So, does this will to power provide sufficiently our comprehension of what this world operates on, either mechanically or materially? I do not mean a description, an appearance, an idea. He set that forward, not in the Berkeley and Schopenhauer sense, not Charles Berkeley, but Bishop Berkeley, an idealist from, I think, England, if I'm correct. From England, that he said that everything's an appearance and nothing's real before you. His idealism versus Schopenhauerian will, where yes, it's an idea, but it's in the appearance and a representation, but at the same time, it's the sole cause of pain. But he's saying, no, it's neither of these. It's possessing the same degree of reality as our emotions themselves, as a more primitive form of the world of emotions, in which everything still lies locked in mighty unit. It's a unity among the wills while competing. It's a competing unity, the same. And it branches out and develops in an organic process. Becoming. Also, as only fair is made weaker and more sensitive. Because you could see this in reality too, and with a personal experience too, of the turmoil, the agony, mental and physical, and the bombardment of how life functions. We become, to a degree, weaker and sensitive, but that's the stages of healing. Among that healing stages, we we've overcome that brief time of pain, aka self-development through turmoil and discipline. Continues forward as a kind of instinctual life in which all organic functions, together with self-regulation, assimilation, nourishment, excretion, metabolism, are still synthetically bound together as a ascendant form of life. So he posits the idea that it's an instinctual life, but it assimilates, it nourishes, it excretes. It's this form of metabolism while it's bound to one another and not separate. Why are not separate? Because of its dynamism or dynamic relation and tension. They are related to one another. There's no fixed cause or first cause to relate and draw back to the origin of everything. But it's a sufficient multiplicity of itself, a wills to power multiplying in relation to other wills to power, while sacrificing and becoming an or symptom yes, sacrificing first, and a symptom intrudes and appears somewhere, and he'll say this was voluntary or involuntary, both of them at the same time. Both of them are included. And this symptom attacks and degrades and cripples this this entity of life. But it's a symptom and a sign of flourishment, perfection, excellence. In the end, it is not merely permitted to make this experiment, it is commanded by the conscience of method. He's saying here it's an experiment, not a thought experiment, but a physical experiment. Later in his life, he would wholly agree that this is what life is. And to a degree, he's saying it right before us. Several kinds of causality so long as the experiment of getting along with one has not been taken to its ultimate limits, to the point of nonsense, if I may say so. Another criticism of causality, where the moralists or individuals love to pinpoint the cause and effect and how the efficiency truly acted upon its nature with nature in a sense of how they see nature in a rational, mathematical, idealist, self-identical, etc., aka nonsense methods to pinpoint arrogantly what's the true cause of this, and we've discussed this before. And now, once the person arrives at the limit, they continue forward, digging deeper and deeper of what's this first cause? What's this causa C? Or not causa C, causa prima. That is a morality of method which one may not repudiate nowadays. It follows from its definition, as mathematicians would say. So nobody would repudiate this form of method today of causality with the experiment that he's positing before us. They would accept that causality versus what he's saying. In the end, question whether we really recognize will as efficient, whether we believe that causality of will, do so and fundamentally believe in this precisely belief of causality itself. Make the experiment of positing causality of will hypocritically as the only one will. Individuals love simplifying to one minute and small particle, aka the atomus, which he criticized earlier in part one, Prejudices of Philosophers. But it's not a independent unity. It's a singular force that's multiplied. It's infected everything. So while positing a causality of will, it's hypocritically condensing it to one unit, an independent unit. It's not. And enter the 180 of how Nietzsche sees this situation. Will, in parentheses, can, can of course operate only on will and not on matter, not on the nerves. Enough. One must venture the hypothesis that whatever effects are recognized, will is operating upon will. All that mechanical occurrences, insofar as a force is active in them, are a force of will, effects of will. Yes, he's using force, effect, and cause, but not in this dualistic cause, causality sense. He's saying the will doesn't posit or execute the event itself. It participates inside of it. And there's another word that he uses in another sense. He won't say it here, but in another sense, the spirit. The spirit or will simply accompanies the event unfolding itself. It's not the doer or the what it's the doing, but it's not the doer. And he was saying genealogy and morals, the doer of this mutual substratum, but there is no substratum, is simply linely added, while the doing or the function is everything. And that's the will itself. It's everything unfolding of the event versus the doer acting upon that will. It continues forward, granted finally that one succeeded in explaining our entire instinctional life as a development, ramifications, aftermath of one basic form of the will to power. As is my theory, granted that one should trace all organic functions back to this will to power, and could also find it in the solution to the problem of procreation and nourishment. They are one problem. One could have acquired the right to define all efficient force unequivocally as the will to power. The world seen from within, the world described and defined according to its intelligible character. It could be. No, I didn't say could. He said would. That was my Freudian slip. It would be will to power and nothing else. Translate will to power to one word, game. There's no withdrawal from the game of life. Chaos isn't a mere burden to passively overcome, but to utilize for the creation and creativity of something novel. For Nietzsche, everything is will to power or game, and if this there's no withdrawal. If this game merely ceases, it dies. But nothing can exist outside of this game, while nothing can be created outside and beyond this game. In the spiritual, fictional, and Platonic Christian sense. To add briefly, he doesn't say it here, but with the will to power, or the will participating inside the event itself, in the event that's unfolding itself, sometimes the will doesn't voluntarily appear or cause what the cause will say, or doesn't affect the event itself. There's an absence of the will. This form of absence is inside the person in an event that's external, beyond their control, is the will outside their existence that's being affected and unfolding an event outside their control versus how the events unfold on us. That external, well, not on us, but the events that we perform, that's where the will participates voluntarily. The involuntary is something outside of our control. To clarify what he was saying earlier. Now, aphorism 37, short one. Does that to speak vulgarly not mean God is refuted, but the devil is not? On the contrary, my friends. And who the devil compels you to speak vulgarly? It's short, nuance, and hysterical. He'll do the same thing in Genealogy of Morals. Um, I laugh every time with this. But he's saying it's the opposite. We refute God because who who decided? No, I'm incorrect. It's that we refuted both of them. It's the contrary, and that you continue that vulgar speech that we refuted this God, but we didn't do away with Satan, Lucifer, the devil. He's saying no, 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 no. The contrary, my friends. We refuted both. The devil, the trickery, the trickster, the deceiver inside you compels you to speak vulgarly again and again, and continue that basis of again, again, and again. So, he refuted both of them. Aphorism 38, he's discussing the French Revolution, of how the nobility from inside France and outside France, including himself, observed this superfluous flair that that occurred. The Nietzsche on revolution, war, he's saying he loves it to a degree that it's a social catharsis from how morality has clamped everybody to the floor. But this revolution was in favor of decadent and nihilistic values of liberté, fraternité, and like like freedom, liberty, and fraternity or brotherhood, etc., etc. The slogan, and that it was the peasantry overcoming repressively the constitutional monarchy. Yes, France was a constitutional monarchy at the time of King Louis XVI. He says that this gruesome, closely considered superfluous farce, into which, however, noble and enthusiastic spectators of all of Europe interpreted it from a distance with their own indignation and raptures so long and so passionately that the text disappeared beneath the interpretation. You can go however you want to go. France, you do you. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. Oh wait, I see my people doing the same thing as what you're doing. We're gonna put you down. That's not what he's saying, but that's how I would first interpret it. The other interpretation is that these indignant and rapturous nations spectating France's conundrum aren't realizing the situation, and that their interpretation of the text that they saw or the writing on the wall and how they read the room was beneath their radar and their interpretation. They're like, I'm not going to worry about that. Plus, he was such a bad ruler anyhow, so I'm just going to push it aside. So, as a noble posterity could once again misunderstand the entire past, and only thus perhaps make the sight of it endurable. Staring at you, Hegel, how you interpret history dialectically. Or rather, has this not already happened? Have we ourselves not been this noble posterity? And insofar as we comprehend this, it is not at this moment done with. Haven't we overcome and rid of something finite and frivolous for a time? But haven't we operated and conducted this noble posterity for the peasants to overcome and revalue everything that we've done? So it's begin we had to enter the world of ancient Greece, where it became mentally sensitive and weaker for the arrival of Socrates to capitalize on this weaker and sensitive morality and mentality of Greece. And from that revaluation and reinterpretation of this noble posterity, it was renamed as noble posterity in their sense, while the true noble values became secondary and the plebeian values became primary in the form of this misinterpretation of the entire past and history moving forward. Indeed, just saying, didn't we ourselves have this noble posterity inside us? And didn't we do this? Couldn't we so far have understand this? Not at this moment that has been done with? Late recognition. That's what he would tie of the French Revolution 100 years after the revolution itself. Now with Aphorism 39. There's some French in this. I'll translate the French once we arrive at the French translation. But for now, he's criticizing again the idealists, but in the aspect of the concept good, how the idealists perceive good. A doctrine true, no one like us sees a doctrine true merely because it makes us happy or makes us virtuous. It's the it's the if so and so was happy, so and so would be virtuous. Nietzsche would reverse that and say, no, 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 no. So and so was virtuous because so and so was happy. Do you guys get where I'm going at? That would be that would be Nietzsche. You not see what's going on here? And now the idealists have pounced and capitalized on this, or he would say, who rapturize are over the good, the true, and the beautiful, and let all kinds of colorful, clumsy, and good-naturedness become a desire to swim altogether in their pond. Happiness and virtue are no arguments, but even thoughtful spirits like to forget that making unhappy and making evil are just as like counter arguments or measurements. Something might be true, although at the same time harmful and dangerous in the highest degree. Indeed, it could be pertain to the fundamental nature of existence, that a complete knowledge of it would destroy one, so that the strength of a spirit could be measured by how much truth it could take, merely to what degree it needed to attenuate, veiled, sweetened, blunt, and philosophy. AKA, how much of the truth can you take before saying, no, I don't want any of that. Get it away from me. I don't want it. Eh. Hence why he's saying happiness and virtue are excluded from the argument. Because among us, that doctrine is untruthful. While it's not the true source of joy in being virtuous. But these idealists love the rapturize of the realm of ideas that this can spring to goodness and that goodness can spring to this, etc., and that's how they create their causality chain. Plus, what he's saying here, what let us forget of this making of unhappiness and evil. For it's just little counter arguments to, for how would you say, for timid and mask-wearing individuals do. It's their form of weapons in dialogue. It's how callous they can get for hammering humbleness and discipline upon them. But at the same time, that this truth can also be harmful and dangerous to its high degree. If this fundamental nature of existence had this complete knowledge, it would destroy one, so that the strength of the spirit could be measured by how much truth it could take, or sweeten, or dull, or nullify, falsify, to where it's absorbable, where it could be absorbed and desired. There can be no doubt that for the discovery of certain parts of truth, the wicked and the unhappy are in a favorable position and are more likely to succeed. The wicked and unhappy in this sense is what the objective moralists deem as that is evil, that is vile, that is bad. Well, the other people who don't deem that say, okay, I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to use it. I'm still going to eat it. No, don't do it. Don't do it. What do you mean, don't do it? I'm going to do it. That's where the favorable position, because not to speak of wicked who are happy, a species about whom the moralists are silent upon. They're silent upon acknowledging the opposition as being vile, who never who among these silent moralists who never speak of the wicked, who are performing what they call good. But the contrary, or the opposite, is the truth. Where these people in the favorable position love this chase, love this dance, this tourney, this rapture of life-inducing joy, including the wicked, the egregious, something horrendous, but it's an afterthought that complements the good. Perhaps severity and cunning provide more favorable conditions for the formation of strong, independent spirit and philosopher than does that gentle, sweet, yielding good-naturedness, and art of taking things lightly, which is prized a scholar, and rightly prized. A philosopher is, in this sense, of an individual who has valor, independence, wisdom, confidence, plus they're free. Versus the philosopher who's gentle, sweet, yielding, and good-naturedness, and and has the art of taking everything lightly as a prize. Why? It's their severity, their cunning severity, of how they plunge the knife. They this they plunge and the venomous knife in society and poisoned it entirely. It would poison the entire metabolism of life. We can also interpret how, while they're independent, strong, and nobler, they're at the same time approachable, genial, yield yielding to the true good nature of reality. Well, they practice the art of forgetting. If they're ridiculed or slandered, they shrug their shoulders and say, okay, okay, there's that interpretation. Supposing in advance that the concept philosopher is not limited to the philosopher who writes books, or worse, writes books of his philosophy. Nietzsche, you contradicting yourself there, boy. I'll let that slide. A mulligan. It's a rebuttal for him. It's to a degree, a partial contradiction on his part, but he's distinguishing again the philosopher versus the philosopher, aka the person who who lives aligned with his art of life, well, his artistic style of life, versus the person who spectates the art of life. A final trait in the image of a free-spirited philosopher is provided by Stendhal in a view of what German taste is. I do not want to fail to emphasize where it goes against German taste, aka the Goethe German taste. And that now it's the French phrase of to be a good philosopher, said this last great psychologist. And the other translation is you have to be you have to be dry, clear, without illusions. A banker who has made a fortune has a part of character required to make discoveries in philosophy. That is to say, to see clearly into what is. I think there's other. No, to see clearly what is. What he's saying in both of these is this final great psychologist, and this final great psychologist is saying, what is it to be a good philosopher? And his definition, a good philosopher is to have to be dry, have foresight or cognizance or clear conscience, with zero illusions, while at the same time being a banker, absorbing the fortune of life while developing the character that requires the investigations and personal disciplined decisions in his philosophy. That is to say, to see through everything of what truly was once thought to be true. Am I grabbing my my bookmarker? No, I don't bookmark this work. I bookmark other works because I'm reading Emerson, and Emerson's great to me. That's everything Nietzsche has to say from Aphorism 36 to 39. There's a link in the description of the Men's Academy. I'm inside. Monday, the leader and co-leader is orchestrating and orchestrating their mastermind for individuals to develop their business. If you're intrigued of business development, there's a link in the description for the Men's Academy. You communicate with the two leaders, and they'll situate you. Amor fati. Love your fate.